Hey, what's up, everybody? Oh my goodness, there we go. There's some lights. How we all doing? Welcome. My name is Ryan. This is Coffee House Questions, and here we are for the final live stream discussion podcast, whatever it is that you're watching on of 2019. And I have a few thoughts that I have that I'm going to be discussing based on the movie that I watched with my family, the Nativity story. So I'm going to discuss some of that and kind of work through a little bit of the storyline of Jesus' birth. But mainly, I want to finish off the year doing a Q&A, answering some of the pressing questions and issues that you may have from Instagram or Twitter or from YouTube or whoever it is, wherever you're watching, that you have, and to kind of discuss the issues that have been pressing on your mind as we finish off 2019. So, first of all, I just want to say 2019 has been an awesome, great year. I'm kind of right now going through and reflecting on a lot of just things that have taken place, and I have some highlights that I want to share with you guys before I jump in. And again, if you have your questions, if you're watching live, send those in. We'll get to those in a bit. But man, in 2019, I set some goals for 2019 of what I kind of wanted to see happen. Wasn't really super specific, trying to figure out exactly how things are going to work. But kind of going back now and totaling everything up and reflecting on what happened, I am blown away. I'm super pumped. I'm excited about kind of what happened, how people were involved, and what God did through that time. So just a quick little recap, and I posted this online as well. You can see this if you follow on Facebook or Instagram. But 120, this will be 121 YouTube videos in 2019. Oh my goodness, this is my first year of YouTube. And so I just started posting and recording. Most of them are short Q&A videos. 74 videos are questions submitted on Instagram, on Twitter, or from my students in my high school classroom, answering specific questions that high schoolers have. 74 of those. I wish I could have done more, but really just didn't have the time to do all the editing and recording that is necessary, which, kind of on a side note, is one reason why, if you go to Facebook, I have an end of the year giving opportunity where I want to, in 2019, be able to produce some more videos. To do that, some software might be helpful to be able to produce better videos, but also maybe get someone that can kind of help me out a little bit in doing some of the editing. Then that would take a huge burden off of my shoulders, trying to edit 120 videos. But I also did 7 live streams, interviews, as well as these, trying to interact with you, the listener, and had over 7,600 views, which most people get way more than that on a single video, and I understand that, but I'm still super pumped in that this is my first year on YouTube. And I'm excited that anyone is watching these videos and that right now 4 of you are following. So again, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. It really has been a lot of fun learning this new platform. And again, I want to try to figure out some more software and some more things that I can do. So when I do interviews, it's not just you staring at me and hearing the other side, but hopefully be able to do some video interviews where you can see both sides. So those are some goals that I have in 2020 when it comes to YouTube. As far as speaking events, again, I said I wanted to do 50 events, but I didn't really know how that tracked out. And I kind of landed, I guess, in the middle, where I did 35 different events that were totaled up to be about 51 days where I was at an event in 2019, gave 77,000 lectures to an estimated over 3,000 attendees, mostly students and some adults. So again, super excited about that. And if you want to check out or have me at your church, camp, or school, you can go to the link that'll be posted here below when I get this all edited, and or go to the website, coffeehousequestions.com, and you can request me in 2020. My calendar for the summer is filling up. And if you saw the picture on Instagram or YouTube, or Instagram or Facebook, you saw that July was a packed month. I think I did 6 events at 27 lectures during the month of July. Other months, I'm more free, but I'd love to come out and attend. So that was a fun time this year. As far as the podcast, 42 different podcasts in at least 50 different countries. That's where my list maxes out at. In past years, it's been over 100 countries. I recorded over 1,200 hours of podcasts and had those downloaded and played over 18,000 times. And then of those 42 podcasts, 15 of them were, or 15 different guests came on the show. Some of them did more than one episode, where we reviewed 9 different books. And so those are some of the highlights of 2019 that just blew me away. I was super excited about just in really transitioning. I used to write a lot of blogs, kind of got away from that, put most of my time towards YouTube videos, And again, I'm just having a lot of fun. So I hope you guys are enjoying it as well. And again, if you're watching live, send in your questions, type those into the live chat, and I'll be sure to address those here in a little bit. Some of the top videos on YouTube, the top one was, will suicide send a person to hell? And then actually 2 Christian views on dinosaurs. And then, do we have free will in heaven if we can't sin? Those would be the top 3 videos on YouTube that students were asking and really wanted answers to. When it comes to podcasts, the top 3, number 1 was Human Origins and Neanderthals with Dr. Fazal Rana. Number 2 was using atheist role plays to train students. And then the third one, topping out the top 3, was Biochemistry, Evolution, and Evidence for God with Dr. Fazal Rana again. So Faz Rana had 2 in the top 10. And he has that new book, Humans 2.0, great book. We discussed that on here as well. He actually joined me for 4 shows in 2019. So, all right, I have some quick opening comments, and then hopefully getting to the questions that you guys have and that you hopefully are going to be turning in here in the live chat. Again, that's kind of the risk you take, I guess, in doing a listener Q&A or a live Q&A, is hopefully people turn in these questions. But so the Christmas Day, actually, had a chance to watch the Nativity story with my family. And this is actually a recommendation, I believe, by John Piper. What he said, this is one of the closest kind of biblical accounts of the birth of Jesus that has been produced and made into movie form, that's very popular. And he recommended watching it. And so we did. And actually, I was very surprised. I was very happy in how accurate it was. There's a lot of really good stuff, but there are a few things that really, didn't quite match up. And I find that that's kind of what happens with a lot of the Christmas stories that we discuss in the Christmas season. And in the years past, I've discussed this before Christmas, but I also don't want to ruin, your Christmas play at church or anything that you guys watch. And so sometimes it's good to maybe watch all that kind of stuff first, hear the accounts that people give first, watch the Christmas plays, and then afterwards kind of reflect on, okay, now how does the story actually go? What is the true account? Because, when you're trying to make a movie of something, and I think this kind of happens when most people talk about, the book versus the movie, and the movie is never as good as the book, because the book just contains way more information. And when you're trying to fit that much information into a short little plot, things kind of get cut or done out of order. And that just kind of happens in the making of movies. And so, that's the same that I think happens in a lot of our Christmas plays, is you take all of the parts of the nativity story, of the birth of Jesus story, and you combine it into one play, into one movie, and it's hard to kind of tell the difference. And then this leads, if we're not careful, this leads some people on an atheist website that I have seen and read, where they say, look, there is a contradiction in the nativity story, where they will ask the question, what happened to Jesus after his birth? One gospel says Jesus fled into Egypt. The other gospel says he went into Jerusalem. If you know your geography, Egypt is not in Jerusalem, or Jerusalem's not in Egypt. And so they said, look, here is a contradiction. And so we have to sometimes take a step back and understand what these accounts are saying, and really kind of lay out this story. And I think it's good for kids, for students, for adults, into truly understanding kind of what is going on here, so that we have a correct understanding of what truly happened to Jesus. And so I want to kind of work through a quick little timeline based on Matthew and Luke, and understanding or making maybe some corrections in the Jesus story, in that nativity story, before getting to your questions. Now, the first one, kind of before we even get there, is just kind of a side point of where was Jesus born? And, this is, you often see he's born in a stable, he's born in a cave. I don't actually think this is where Jesus was born. And then also in a lot of plays or whatever, he goes to the innkeeper and he asks the innkeeper, is there any more room in the inn? And there's no more room in the inn. But I think if we take a look at the Greek and we take a step back, I don't think that Jesus actually went to an inn. I don't think that Joseph and Mary went to an inn, and I don't think that's who rejected him. And there is some reason for that. And here I have a little document. But first is that you kind of have this contextual problem with understanding it as being there's no more room in the inn. There are a few problems with this. The first one is contextual, and the first one comes from Luke 2:6. It says, while they were there in Bethlehem, time came for her to give birth. Now, that's one thing in the nativity story, is that while they're walking almost into the city, all of a sudden Mary's like, oh my goodness, the baby's coming. And so Joseph is running into Bethlehem, banging on doors, trying to find somewhere for Mary to give birth because she is ready. The moment they get into Bethlehem, she's ready to give birth to Jesus. But Luke chapter 2, verse 6 says, while they were there, time came for her to give birth. So I don't think that Joseph and Mary are showing up in Bethlehem, that there's no room for them in the inn, and they're frantically trying to find this room, this place where they can have Jesus. They get stuck in some barn or cave, and then next thing you know, Jesus comes. It's while they were there. And you think about also the, excuse me, you think about the cultural aspect of this. Joseph is going back to the city of his heritage. This is where his family is from. That's why he's going back there for the census. And so you have a man with his wife going, a pregnant wife, going back to the city where he is from. He's staying there for a while, and while he was there, it's time for her to give birth. What kind of family is not going to let his family members stay with the family, especially how close families were at that time, especially with a pregnant wife, being the son of David's family, not going to let him stay with the family when he shows up. And so I personally think, and this is my view based on a few different things, is that, well, actually, let me, before I get to my problem. So I think you have a historical problem, or sorry, you have a cultural problem, the family culture and how Joseph is going to show up. I think that you are going to have you're going to have the contextual problem of while they're there, these things are happening. You also have a linguistical problem. The verb used that we have translated in kataluma can also mean guest room. And we see this used in Luke chapter 22. That's and Mark 14, the story of the upper room with Jesus and his disciples. And so it's translated guest room in those verses. Also in Luke chapter 10, the story of the Good Samaritan, Luke actually uses a different word completely to talk about a commercial inn where the Good Samaritan takes the man. And that's a completely different word. And so when you look at, and if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. If you're listening on podcast, you'll have to imagine with me for a second. But here is kind of the layout of a first century house. And you can Google this and see what first century house is. But what you have is you have an area for the animals to stay inside the house where when it's cold that they can hang out. Next to that, cut out of the ground, is going to be where their mangers are, or where the feeding area is. And then right next to that is going to be the living room where people stay. And if you, again, Google first century, Bethlehem house, you'll see the same thing. And so what you have here is, I think, happens, and here's where my personal view comes in, based on kind of the linguistic problem of that word actually means upper room, not necessarily commercial inn. Historical problem, the size of Bethlehem was not big. They're not going to have hotels there. Hotels are going to be in inns, are going to be in bigger cities. Cultural problems, contextual problems. I think what happened is Joseph and Mary, before she's ready to give birth, they show up in Bethlehem. He goes to a family's house and says, hey, can I stay in your guest room? The family says, no, the guest room is full, but hey, your family, here's the living room, stay in our living room, stay in the common area, which is actually right next to where the animals are and where the feeding troughs are cut out. And while they were there, it came time for her to give birth. Jesus is born in that family member's house, and then also laid in the manger because the animals were right there. So that's kind of my view on that. And now I see at least one question has come in. I'll get to it in just a moment. Let me kind of work through the storyline here now really quick. Now, if you start with Luke, now I think the movie and the nativity story kind of follows the context of Matthew. Because in Matthew, it says, now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, the wise men show up. And then Herod summons the wise men to figure out what is going on. Now, in the movie, Herod actually knows about the prophecy and is looking out for Jesus way before the wise men show up, way before Jesus is born. In fact, he even has people on the roadway checking who's traveling to Bethlehem to see if they're anyone of importance. And Joseph and Mary get stopped by the Roman guards. We're going to Bethlehem. They stop him, but obviously they let him go because Joseph was a poor guy, and they thought, oh, he's not going to be the one that's fulfilling this prophecy. So Herod knows way before. But Matthew then follows along and says, then, right after Jesus is born, then they go off into Egypt. And this is how the movie is Jesus is born. The wise men are there at the moment of birth. The shepherds are there at the moment of birth. It's all one scene. And then while Joseph, Mary, and Jesus are sleeping in the barn, the Roman guards show up and they kind of slip out the back and they go off into Egypt as the Roman guards kill the children. Now, if you look at Luke, though, I think Luke kind of stretches out this timeline a little bit. So Luke chapter 2, verse 8 says, when Jesus was born, in the same region, there were shepherds in the field watching their flock. So the shepherds are close by, or probably right there. Jesus is born, and the shepherds visit Jesus. It then says at the end of 8 days. So now 8 days had passed between the shepherds and Jesus, I think. Then it was time for him to be circumcised. He's given the name Jesus by the angel, and then before the name the angel gave before he was conceived. And then when the time came for the purification according to the law of Moses, they brought Jesus to Jerusalem and presented him to the Lord. So what I think is this is all happening before the wise men visit. And so after Jesus performs everything in Jerusalem, right, and the prophecies are spoken over him in Jerusalem, then it says in Luke Luke 2, verse 39. And when they performed everything according to the law of the Lord, they returned into Galilee to their town of Nazareth. Now, what's interesting, though, is if you go over to Matthew, after they are getting out of Egypt, it says, then he rose, Joseph, took the child and his mother, went back to the land of Israel. But when they heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judah in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. Now, in Luke, after they finish in Jerusalem, they go back to Galilee, to Nazareth. So why is it then that after they're leaving Egypt, which I think happens after, why would they be heading to the district? Why would they be going back to Israel or Bethlehem and then have to instead go back to Galilee? So this is reading into the text, trying to understand the flow of the thought. And I've learned this from other people, so I'm not the only one with this thought. But my view is here's what happens, is that they return to Nazareth after the purification in Jerusalem. They actually get their stuff and they move to Bethlehem. And then that is why then, when the wise men show up, Jesus and Joseph and Mary are in Bethlehem. And when Herod wants to have Jesus killed, he says all the boys 2 years and under. Now, a newborn doesn't look like a 2-year-old. You don't have to know kids very well to know that. And so I think that, yeah, Jesus was born. The shepherds visited. He was circumcised after 8 days. He then goes to Jerusalem, purifies. They return to their home in Nazareth. They get their stuff. They move to Bethlehem. And at some point in that first 2 years of Jesus' life, then the wise men show up and visit Jesus. Herod then wants Jesus killed and orders that all boys 2 years old or younger are killed. And that is when the angel shows up in a dream to Joseph. He says, go to Egypt. They depart. They go to Egypt. Herod kills all the kids. And then once Herod is dead, then Joseph and Mary and Jesus are traveling back to Bethlehem. But the person reigning over Judea, it was the place of his father. Joseph was afraid to go there. And that's why he withdraws back into Galilee, where Jesus would live in Nazareth. And so that he fulfills the prophecy that he would be called a Nazarene. So I think that when you stretch this story over about 2 years' time, I think it makes a lot more sense how it lays out. I think if you compare the Luke account to the Matthew account, you kind of piece these things together. They're kind of jumping. Matthew goes birth straight to Egypt, right? Luke is focusing on the purification and going into Jerusalem. It's different aspects of the story that when you actually kind of spread the story out, I think they fit together very well. So that's kind of my thoughts on the Jesus story. Again, in the movie, it was kind of funny. After the wise men visit Jesus, the question, one of the wise men says, I am very smart and I'm almost never wrong. I don't think we should go back to Herod. I think we should go home another way. And my wife and I immediately both went, no, you didn't think that, wise men. It's not because of your wisdom. In fact, actually, Scripture tells us that an angel appeared to the wise men, told them not to go back to Herod, told them to take another way, and that's why they did. So anyways, there's kind of my thoughts. I thought it was a great movie. I think that this is just a great thing, that when you are spending time with family, I think it is a great time. And it actually was a really cool teaching moment with the young nieces and nephews that I have, to watch it with them. And we kind of talked it through. Hey, here's why the angel did this. Here's why this is happening. Here's what the prophecy was. And really trying to, or really having them visualize the story of Jesus' birth. And then afterwards, being able to correct a few things, say, hey, here's what happened. Here's what the story is. And so anyways, that was a lot of fun. And I do suggest it. It might become a yearly tradition in the Pauly household. But anyways, all right. I said I was going to answer your questions. I have quite a few people that are watching me right now, so I love it. Again, if you have questions, send them in. But we're going to spend the last few minutes here that we have together answering some of the questions. And so New York Gaming writes in and says, hey, my friend Dominic keeps dying in a video game. Tell him to quit it. Okay, thanks a lot, New York Gaming. Hey, quit it or keep having fun. You'll get better. Robert Louis Matthews, what was the star that the wise men from the east saw? Why were they the only ones to see it? Now, I'm curious, and this is the hard part about taking live questions, is what was the star? Some say it was an angel, which makes sense if it's moving. It's probably not a shooting star because those move fast and then go away. I think I could go along with that's an angel that was the star. Why were they the only ones that saw it? I don't know. And if you have a verse, I'd love to see it. I don't know if they were the only ones who saw it. I can't think of a scripture that says they were the only ones, but maybe they were the ones that saw it, recognized the uniqueness of it, and actually decided to follow it because they were studying those things. I'm not quite sure, but there are my quick thoughts on why they were the only ones to see it. I don't know if they actually were. I could look through the passages here, but I don't think I see exactly where it says that. So I don't know if that helps. I'll definitely look into that. If I find something, I'll definitely post something later. Well, as more questions come in, a few more things kind of on 2019 highlights. If you are watching on YouTube and or listening to podcasts, but you are listening more frequently or more recently, I really do appreciate it. And I just want to let you know some of the people that have been on the show and are going to be on the show on January 6th. Is my next live stream. You can see that on the YouTube channel. I believe it's at 2:30 in the afternoon. I have to go back and check that for sure. But anyways, it's on YouTube. But I'll be interviewing Brett Kunkel. And so actually in February, let me pull up the date here really quick. If my phone would open, of course it doesn't when I need it to. February, where is it? There it is. February 28 and 29 is going to be the Maven Parent Conference here in California. The focus is going to be helping us understand and work with students when it comes to screens and the problem of screens and technology. And if this is something that you've noticed, like me, screens are all over the place. You go somewhere and just everyone has their phone out. Everyone is constantly on them. And I fall prey to that as well. It's just sometimes it's like put the phone away and just enjoy the moment. And so actually on the 28th and 29th of February in California, and you can find it at mavenconferences.com, is the Maven Parent Conference. It's not something that you want to miss. And so to kind of get some more information about that, as well as discuss the problem of screens, Brett Kunkel, the founder of Maven, is going to be on the show on January 6th at 2:30 p.m. California time, discussing screens, technology, and that conference. And so if you have questions or comments on screens and technology, I would just encourage you to send in your questions, your comments, to follow or watch that live stream as well. I think the amount of people that are watching right now is encouraging to me. Come back on January 6th at 2:30 p.m. for that interview. That's going to be a lot of fun. Other interviews, though, here in 2019, my goodness, I interviewed Craig Hazen on his book, Fearless Prayer, J.P. Moreland on his book, Scientism and Secularism, Dr. Fazal Rana on his book, Humans 2.0, as well as a separate conversation on human origins and Neanderthals, John Marriott on his book, A Recipe for Disaster, How do we prepare students for a life with Christ, a faith that lasts. Sean McDowell and J. Warner Wallace both co-authored the book, So the Next Generation Will Know. They both joined me to discuss different aspects of the problem that we are facing with our students, as well as how do we prepare and train students well. Ken Samples from Reasons to Believe joined me on his book, Classic Christian Thinkers, looking at some of the super smart Christians throughout church history that have had some amazing, incredible insights and what we can learn from them, not realizing or not believing that we just come up with all these kind of ideas ourselves, but really it's based on a long tradition in Christianity. Clay Jones joined me to discuss his kind of expertise on genocide and judgment in the Old Testament and solving that problem, as well as I was a guest on Drew Covert's show, Tent Making Christianity, discussing youth apologetics. Tim Stratton came on to talk about Molinism and Calvinism. Justin Brierley, that was a fun interview from the Unbelievable radio show in England, talking about his conference, Unbelievable Live, as well as Frank Turek, his book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, as well as Stealing from God. And then finally, rounding out the year with Dr. Paul Gould on his book, Cultural Apologetics. So those were some really fun interviews. Some of the highlights of those interviews have been made into YouTube videos, as well as some of the live streams are up as well. And so that's a lot of fun. And again, I'm planning a bunch of interviews for 2020. You guys, hopefully it's something to look forward to. I'm definitely looking forward to it as well. Another couple things just on the calendar as we're wrapping up our time, wrapping up 2019, unless some more questions come in, is January 24 and 25 is the Women in Apologetics Conference at Biola. Now, this is not only for women, anyone can come, but it is by women apologists. They do all the main training, it's all the main sessions, all the breakout sessions are done by incredible female apologists, some of whom have been on this show before, and others who I want to get on this show. And so that is something you don't want to miss. And then what's really fun is that they have asked me on the 25th, on that Saturday, to do the WIA Kids training. And so they have about 40 kids from 3rd grade to 6th grade that have signed up, where their parents are at the conference, and they're going to come and they're going to get apologetics training tailored for them. And so actually their theme is going to be on intelligent design. And so we're going to spend from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. with some breaks and games and fun and all that kind of stuff, really focusing on understanding God as creator and looking into that. And so that is going to be a good time there. On February 8th is the Turn Your Campus event at Biola University. And so Biola every year hosts this event. I've attended it once with students, as well as I spoke at it last year. A great event with, I think it was a few thousand students that showed up to receive training on how to be evangelists on their on their high school campus, how to turn their campus, how to really be confident and speak out for Christ. And so a lot of great breakout sessions. A lot of different speakers. Last year, I was able to speak on world religions, why they all can't be true, really trying to point to the truth of Christianity. This year, the topic I submitted, which hopefully got accepted, was tactics in defending your faith. And so really trying to work through how to have productive, tactful, winsome, wise conversations to where we can take these difficult cultural issues that students are facing in their high school classrooms with their high school friends, and be able to have awesome conversations, understanding the Christian worldview, understanding the culture, and helping people see the truth, and doing so with compassion and with love. And so that's definitely something to look forward to as well. If you have high school students in the area, is that Maven Student Conference. And then finally, this summer, I'm already booked up for 3 different Maven events. I'm going to Berkeley twice. I'm going out to Utah once. And so 3 different weeks doing those events. Really looking forward to those training events. As you probably know, it's something that I really do look forward to, and I appreciate and I love doing. And so that's kind of my schedule right now. That's a highlight of what's happening here in 2020. And then just as we wrap up, again, just mentioning the fundraiser, kind of the end of the year giving opportunity for Coffee House Questions. One thing I want to do is the branding, the logos, the design work for Coffee House Questions is lacking. I mean, a lot of it is stuff that I'm just truly grateful for that people have given to me, because everything I've done in this ministry, all 120 videos, all the podcasts, all the equipment that I bought, comes out of my own pocket. And it's hard to work a full-time job, plus I umpire baseball, plus try to produce videos and record podcasts and do the work for Maven and everything. And it's a lot of work to do. And I don't have time for that design work or really the money to do it. And so the main thing that I really want to do, and why I'm fundraising the money here at the end of the year, is to hire someone to design some quality stuff for me, to get a logo done, to get some intro stuff done, to get some promotional materials done, and really kind of create a Coffee House Questions brand, so to speak. Other funds really that I'm wanting to get done is to get some software to do better YouTube interview videos, possibly get someone to help me edit some videos, and so we can get that done. And so I can get more videos done and not have to take the time to edit them as well. And so really, I would encourage you to check out the link in the description below, as I'm about to post it here soon, to check out that end of the year giving opportunity before 2019 is up. And so one more question just came in from Marina S. Why does the Bible contain so many literary devices? Why can't it just be straightforward so people avoid misunderstanding the text, which would prevent all the different denominations? It's hard to understand what God wants from us when the text is so open for interpretation. Well, I think this is a great question, and I really do appreciate you sending this in. I mean, the Bible contains literary devices because it's a work of literature. And so that's kind of how literature is written. The problem is that it could have been straightforward for the people there, but it's also we're removed by a long time, and so we don't have the historical understandings maybe that the people at that time had to understand these things. Because I mean, there are certain euphemisms, there are certain ways that we speak today that I may use a certain term, like it's raining cats and dogs, and you understand that, and it's easy. And you get it. Because the Bible is a book that is communicating to that people at that time. And so they're going to use the language that they understand at that time. However, someone from a different culture comes in and hears Americans talking, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to understand. And so the Bible, being a book that is communicating a message that is communicated in human language at a certain time, culture, and context, it's going to have those things. And so it does take the extra work for us to understand the historical context, to understand the literary devices, to understand the genre that it is, whether it's poetry or history, to be able to understand it better. I think that, look, there are times where I say some very straightforward things, and people still misunderstand me. Because people have a different culture, a different bias. They want to understand something different. And sometimes it's very hard, even when we have a very straightforward way of talking, people try to twist what it is that we want to say. And so I do think the Bible and the heart of God is that we have a heart that wants to understand him, that wants to figure out what it is that he has for us, rather than what it is that we want to get out of it. And so it is something that's open for interpretation. But the good thing, though, is that the important things, the death of Jesus on the cross, the existence of God, the fact that Jesus is God, those things are extremely clear. And those things are what denominations don't disagree on, right? And so you have the Christian umbrella that is, here are the core understandings, that the Bible is the word of God, that Jesus is God, the Trinity is true, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit are each one God. And these are the things that are extremely clear in the text, that are not open for interpretation, that all denominations agree on. Then there are the things that are less important. There are the things that are not as clear, that do create the different denominations, because just our best understanding on trying to understand what God is trying to convey to us. And that's where, hopefully, as believers, we have some grace with each other. Right. As I often say, and I think this is a common example, is that most know that I take the position that the earth is old, and that's not a common, or maybe that's not the popular opinion. You know, a lot of Christians believe the earth is young, but to me, I say, look, that's not a core doctrine of the faith. This is something that, look, the Bible is not 100% clear on, and it does leave it as a possibility of being open. So maybe it's not as important. Maybe we should not take this dogmatic stand where it's my way or the highway, and if you disagree with me, you're not a Christian. Because these are things that we can't agree with. Same thing when it comes to eschatology, the end of the earth, and how what's going to happen with pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib. Is it amillennial or dispensational, and all these different kinds of views? The Bible is not super clear on it, and so maybe we can have our own opinion, but maybe we need to hold that opinion lightly, because, look, it's not a core, solid, indisputable doctrine of the faith that we can take that dogmatic stand and say, look, this is the way it is. If you don't believe Jesus is God and he died bodily and rose bodily from the dead, then you're not a Christian. We shouldn't take that kind of stand on some of these other things. And so, look, I know this is a great question, and it comes from this place, I think, of really wanting to understand how God is speaking to us, and just tell it to me clear, and so that I can just do it. But I do think that there's also God wanting us to figure him out. And I think, man, even in the relationships I have, my wife, me, my friends, my parents sometimes will say something, and I misunderstand it. And I have to actually go out of my way to say, hold on, what did you mean by that? Let me understand you. And it helps me understand what you're saying better. And I think that that is an act of love. That's part of the relationship that God desires for us to have with him, not just this, manual, right? The Bible is not just a manual of here's what you do, here's step 1, step 2, step 3, now you're done, you're good. But it really is more like a relationship, and how we communicate in relationships, and how we yeah, just communicate to each other. And so hopefully, I think that us needing to go into the text, interpret it, study it, understand it, is truly showing an act of love to God, and showing that we truly want to understand him, even when it's difficult. So Marina asks, thank you so much for that question. I hope that answer helped you as we wrap up. So I think that is our time. I am over, but again, it's a live stream. It's a lot of fun. Thank you guys for helping 2019 be so awesome. I really do appreciate it. I'm blown away by just the views, by the support, by the shares, by everything that you guys have done. And I just love doing it. And this is why I keep doing these things, is because I know it's fun for me, and I know it's a blessing to others. And I truly hope that you have been blessed and encouraged by the work of Coffee House Questions and me in 2019. I'm glad that God has called me to do this and given me this opportunity, and I'm going to do it as long as I can. So thank you guys. I'm going to sign off. Make sure, again, follow, check out all the links. I'll post them here in a moment when this video is done at being edited. Post all the links in the description below for you to check out that end of the year giving opportunity to help support some of the more difficult or detailed work that I need to get hired out to get done, as well as all the links for you to follow, subscribe, and watch and share with your friends, family. If you've enjoyed it, help them enjoy it as well. So I'll be signing off. Guys, as I say on the podcast, sip coffee, think deeply. This is Coffee House Questions with Ryan Pauly. Happy 2019, Happy New Year, and God bless.